Kasia, thank you very much indeed. Welcome everybody to the second webinar of the day. And unlike most webinars, we tried and we did this morning, succeeded in making this really interactive. So the same applies right now for this one. And as you know, this is about the difficult conversations. It's about how to kick them off and how to make them go well, and even how to get out of trouble. So I think I'll just introduce one cast member immediately who's going to join me. Rachel, there she is.
Hello.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at both how to kick them off and but what I'd like to start off by finding out from you, and this is a good opportunity to use the chat pane in your control panel. I'm pointing down there because that's where it is, but it's actually probably down there for you. But wherever your control panel is on your screen, why do some conversations get difficult? So I'd like to ask you, why do some conversations get difficult? What have you spotted in your experience? What has got you into trouble, or what have you seen other people do that's then changed the harmony or the feeling of a conversation? So if you start putting your thoughts and observations into the Q&A pane and have a little think about that. How can they go wrong? So I'll just stay quiet for a moment whilst you're having a noodle about that. And Rachel is going to read a few of these out. Are you seeing those coming up, Rachel?
No, I'm not seeing anything.
All right. We had a little glitch about this as before. I'm sure they will come through eventually. I think people are still noodling. So to kick off with, whilst those answers we've got 2 or 3 have come in already. And one of the things that you'll notice, and actually it came up in Nigel's session on coaching for non-coaches, was that sometimes it takes us to slow down, and Nigel gave us a real object lesson in how to slow down a conversation so that something better happens. Now, the conversation this morning wasn't going wrong, but it was taking a while. In fact, it was Rachel who was being coached by Nigel. Rachel had a real quandary on her mind, and it was taking her a while to construct her thoughts. And Nigel had to be super patient. In fact, a lot more patient than I would have been in just waiting for Rachel. And my tendency would have been to maybe rather speed up the conversation, thinking that I'm encouraging her. So what he introduced was the notion of slowing things down to make them go better. Rachel, are you able to see any comments yet by any medium? Shall I read some out then?
Yes, please.
I think
we'll get this sorted.
Okay, so Debbie says about personal behaviors go against people's values, you get an unexpected reaction. Yeah, so we can trip over, we can say something, particularly at the moment. If you remember also back to Brexit, gosh, Brexit, what was that? But if you remember back to Brexit, and now you only have to start a conversation about a hot topic, and the person might not think they're getting controversial, and they are, and they upset somebody in the group. But there's often something else that has to happen to make it go really badly, and maybe we'll come on to that, Debbie. So thank you for raising that one. Natasha, an aggressive tone of voice and aggressive body language. Yes, that will really get things going, won't it? Amy, I find it's usually on a call or a webinar when people can't see each other or read each other's body language, which makes reading tone very difficult. Yeah, I absolutely think you're right, Amy. There is something about that we can have here, as imperfect as it is. I can actually probably get enough to see there's something not quite right. So that's another one. Lucy says, when one of the participants is not expecting the conversation, it can be really tricky. Yes, if we wrong foot somebody. Also when it's something very personal to the individual and one of the parties gets emotional. By the way, Rachel, feel free to chip in here. I'm cantering through this. Any thoughts that you're having about what you're hearing?
Yes, I think the emotion side of things is definitely a huge factor in why some conversations get difficult. It's even if you're trying to handle a conversation with the best of intentions, an awful lot of it is how someone will react and how someone will take what you're saying as well. And that's one thing that whilst you try and temper what you're trying to say, that you can't control.
Yeah, you strike me, Rachel, I've known you about a year now, and you strike me as being somebody who couldn't possibly offend anybody. Um, uh, so I'd be interested to hear as we go through the session, but right now, I mean, yes, what you do if you've got that difficult news, what's Rachel's approach? I've never asked you this before. This isn't scripted, it just came straight off the top of my head.
What would I do to prepare for a difficult conversation?
Well, how do you kick it off?
Oh, I think try and be clear about it, but neutral at the same time. That's what I would be. I think I would bring the topic up as needed to, and then just try and be fact based and neutral about it, and see what happens after that.
Yeah, yeah. So, Rachel, your tendency is to stick with the facts and try and keep emotion out of it.
Yes.
I've got a couple more comments come up on the screen from Peter and Amira. So whilst I'm going to read those out, I don't suppose you're seeing anything. There's something funny happening in your neck of the woods and comments. Are you getting anything at all, even in the chat pane?
I think we may be coming up with a solution
Okay,
on our
so I'll
side.
leave it at that. I'm going to put an appeal out, a renewed appeal out for volunteers. It would be great to get a couple of you involved. So some of the people who rated themselves a 4 out of 5 were, I might get involved. It would be great if you would, because it's really you who make the sessions, and bringing material in from outside that we're not expecting makes it more fun for you to watch, and it certainly keeps us on our toes. So it would be great if a couple of you can, and in fact, I'm going to need somebody in about 2 minutes time, and it would be great if that person had a difficult conversation in mind that you are going to have very soon, and you could use this as a run through. It may be that the person, slightly Jerry Springer show, it could actually be in the room now, and you can sort of cut to the chase and have it with them through me. So yes, so please, volunteers, shove your hand up so that Nicola can see your hand, and then she is going to, you can see there's a little orange hand at the bottom of your control panel, kind of doing that. So shove your hand up, and then Nicola, you will know you're up for it in a moment. There are a couple more comments. Have you got the one from Peter, Rachel?
Yes, just let me go back to it. When it's obvious that a script or a checklist is being followed.
Yeah, pretty. That would be annoying if you thought someone was going through a procedure. Yeah.
Yes.
What did Amira have to say? Can you see that one?
Yes. So she says, for me, it can be the timing of the conversation, or if it's been done over email when really it should have been done face to face.
Interesting. I had one that came up for me yesterday where somebody was hoping that somebody else would have the conversation on their behalf. It was a very, very difficult one, and I wasn't blaming them for trying to get out of it, but they were absolutely the one who needed to be having the conversation. So it was actually really difficult. Going back to Nigel's session this morning on coaching, it was really, really hard for me to resist telling the person, it's got to be you. But that's where my values got in the way of the coaching. So I have to put my hand up there. But interesting, isn't it? Sometimes when there's is timing, checklist involved, stuff like that, and when tough news is involved. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for all your ideas. So do we have a volunteer, Nicola? Thanks, Rachel.
No problem.
Hoping somebody's sunny face will appear on screen. If not, one of my crew will, I'm sure, step in. It sounds like we have somebody, but they don't have camera yet.
Steph and Amira will be joining you shortly.
Fantastic.
Hi,
Hello, Amira. Hi, hi. Nice to see you.
you too. How are you?
Absolutely fine, thank you. You've got a crystal clear picture there. It must be you're hogging all the bandwidth for London there.
Well, this morning's webinar was really not very clear, so this is progress for me.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, well, I'm sorry about that. Anyway, so difficult conversations. Do you have one lined up for us that I'm going to be at the receiving end of?
Yeah, so hopefully this
Okay.
is a good one. It's a conversation I want to have with my boss,
Right.
and it's about how I influence upwards and
Okay.
how I want him to help me do that. And I guess part of the difficult conversation is being able to give him feedback as part of it as well.
Yeah.
At the moment, I feel that rather than building me and supporting me to influence upwards, he has a lot of conversations in between that maybe I'm not privy to and maybe I don't need to be. But he does it on my behalf, and it comes across that like he's done the work and he's doing it. And I really don't think it helps my credibility or build relationships with that senior level of staff. So it's really
Terrific.
difficult. I haven't thought about how to have it, but I thought now would be a good time.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for being up for it. That's brilliant. Okay, so we'll just call your boss Paul for now, I guess. That's close enough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. And how do I need to be, Amira, just to be a tiny bit like him? I'm not going to ham it up or go for my equity card, but just a couple of things, catchphrases or ways he tends to have.
A little bit wordy, around the houses, um, and slightly defensive if I don't word it in a positive way that's going to appeal to his motivations.
Okay. All right. I can do defensive and wordy. Most people will tell you that. I'll give it my best shot, Amira.
Okay.
So let's go for it, and then we'll you can give yourself feedback at the end, or I can give you a little bit of feedback, and we'll see how it's looking in a few minutes time. So I'm in your hands.
Okay.
So
Hi,
have you
Paul.
walked into my office or whatever? We had an appointment, yeah.
Yeah, I thought,
Oh, of course not. Duh, not now. It's be done like this, isn't it? Of course.
yeah, so it can just be like our regular weekly one-to-one catch up.
Cool. Okay. Hi, Mira.
Hi, Paul. Lovely to see you. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Yeah, all good here, all good. And with you?
Yeah, every day slightly different and learning to adapt. So trying to take it one day at a time.
Good, good. Yes, yeah. There is quite a bit going on. Yeah, absolutely. And I've been certainly looking to step up my contact with colleagues and with the rest of the leadership team, because I think that's it's really important to look after that end of things as we go forward in through this time. Yeah. So yeah, good to hear.
Yeah, thanks. No, that sounds good. And probably actually brings me on to something that I wanted to talk about you with. I know from the beginning you've always said that you want to be open and create feedback both ways and create that open dialogue. So I had something on my mind and I just wanted to share it with you and to get your thoughts. Is that all
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, I'm totally up for that, Amira. Yeah, I'm good. Absolutely. You know what I'm like, open door, etc.
That's very true. So I know we've talked about this in my review, and it's come up in conversations before. So something I'm trying to work on at the moment is how I influence upwards, and that I would really love your support with that. In
Well,
the last
you've
few weeks,
always got that, Amira. I'm a big fan, and I think you're doing a terrific job. You've settled in really, really quickly, and you're kind of starting things from scratch. So I'm 100% on your side, and I always big you up where I can.
thank you, Paul. I really appreciate it. So I guess one thing that's been on my mind in the last few weeks is the conversations between you and the MD around my role, my remit, and what I need to do. And I think it's clear that obviously I've got some gaps that I need to work on. However, there's been a couple of examples that I wanted to bring up that I feel I would have appreciated if you'd done something different. So
Okay.
as an example, there's a couple of conversations that you've had with one of the directors, which is directly about L&D and my role. And you've come back and you've relayed that to me. And specifically what you've said is that you made the decision and you did this and you did that. And so how it came back to me is I felt quite excluded from the conversation. And as your L&D expert within the business, I just felt it would have been nicer to be part of that conversation. I also
I do get that. If I can stop you there, Mira, I do get that. You know, it would be great, but obviously not practical if we could all be there, you know, to kind of, you know, share the glory. And when I say I've done something, so I think it's obvious to most people that, you know, I have a team and you're, you know, you're there, and I always, you know, name check you. But it's just really not practical to always be there, and I think that's kind of, you know, just kind of the way it is.
That's a really fair point, and I understand I'm not at your level and you're privy to different conversations that I am. And I guess I'm thinking about how I can move forward and how I can really learn and build my credibility. So something that's quite important to me is how I can facilitate those conversations myself with that level. So how do you think is the best way that I go about that?
Oh, well, okay. Well, obviously, you know, I'll involve you as much as I can. Sometimes you see that they need more of an overview, and we need to be able to skip around lots of different topics at the same time. So, you know, to have you there, you know, representing your own views or your own thing, it might just be, well, you know, it might just be a little bit sort of time consuming, because obviously there's the others in the team who I would really need to get in front of the board, and so or the management team. So, well, I'll have a little think about how we can do this and give you a bit more exposure. It's a fair point.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful.
Okay. Okay, time out.
Yeah, please.
So was that close enough to how he might be, the other Paul might be, to his name's not Paul, is it? To be useful to you? Is that good enough?
Yeah, that was good. It was a good
Okay.
reaction.
And what you did, Amira, was that roughly the way you handle things, or how you, is that your voice we heard there?
Yeah, I think that obviously I hadn't planned it and I haven't actually given it that much thought as to what I would say.
Okay.
I definitely think I was too wordy. I don't think my examples were specific enough.
So you're worried that I might not have got the message, or I might not be of being compelled by what you were saying because it wasn't specific enough.
Yeah, because I think there was, when you answered, it came across slightly defensive. So then I was really conscious to not fuel that and create a situation of conflict. So then I thought, okay, adapt how I'm coming across. But there is that option of, I think you were just like, oh, well, it is what it is. And that's how it operates. That's how we operate. So kind of deal with it. That was the response.
Yeah, I was actually, yeah, and you picked up. I tell you, the bit that I found the hardest to wriggle is, so the most effective bit was right at the end. You did do it a couple, I think twice, but at the end, when you just said something and you then just suddenly stopped and you didn't say anything else. It was when you weren't talking that I felt under the most pressure to do something real about your complaint.
Okay, that's really good to know.
So there's something about in there about brevity. And actually, I'm going to bring a little chart up on the screen, if you bear with me, Amira, because I want to sort of, as you show things, I want to just put it up there. So there's something we can do. something at the beginning, which is to give some feedback, and feedback is a great way to start one of these difficult conversations. What
Okay.
you did at the end actually is as a sort of another attempt to get your message through, because you weren't sure if you had, is to say something and then brevity. I mean, and then you just stopped, and that was very compelling.
Okay, that's really good to know.
There was something in the about the middle where you thought you were talking too much or you used too many words. What might have been an alternative there?
So I don't know if this is repeating too much at the beginning on the feedback, but in hindsight, I would have had a really specific example instead of going around the houses and setting the scene so much. Just given one example and how that made me feel, and then stopped talking.
Just about here, yes. So one example, and then stop. Yeah. I wasn't swamped by, I don't suppose I was exactly swamped by words. I knew what you were on about, but I tell you what, it made it easier for me to wriggle.
Okay.
The more words you used, the more it was possible for me to find reasons for why you couldn't come to the meeting, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
As you talked, I was able to think of excuses.
Okay.
So there's something that you've taught us here about brevity in the middle, and actually, no, actually, I'm going to say it's not really about brevity. It's more to do with silence, like what you did at the end. It's more to do with staying quiet and out of the way. Interestingly, the same as this morning in the coaching module, when we want somebody to think about something they've done, staying quiet and out of the way, staying out of their boat, is very strong. But it can be really awkward. It can feel very awkward.
Yeah, I think you're so right though. And definitely because like I hadn't thought about the conversation beforehand. So it's all well and good, you know, when you know the theory of it, but when you're in that situation, to actually stay quiet, if you just focus on that, it does
Yeah,
take a lot, definitely. Especially as well when I think you come into the conversation and I already have all of these emotions and I'm trying to preempt everything and I want it to be a positive conversation, but I'm a bit apprehensive. So I think just literally staying silent, if that's my one takeaway that I can do, and that makes it a more of an effective conversation, then I think that's a really positive start for me.
yeah, yeah. And something you just said there for the beginning, and this is a kind of feedback you've said there, and I'm gonna. There's another little slide I just happened to have put together, so I'm just going to very quickly nudge this little bit out of the way, just to one
Okay.
side. But there's something else that you just said, which was about how you were feeling. And this is an awkward how did you put it just now? Said this is an awkward conversation, and I'm sort of
Oh,
I
I'm
wanted to go there.
apprehensive.
Yeah. So that is a really cracking way to begin the conversation, with a piece of, we could call it feedback, we could call it assertiveness. In other words, if you're finding that you're really feeling awkward and it risks maybe pushing you down a very wordy route, doing exactly what you did, Amira, to say, look, I'm feeling really awkward about this conversation because I also want it to go well, though, then that's a real attention grabber. So admitting to how you're feeling is a really compelling way to get somebody's attention, and then stopping.
Yeah, I really like that because I think I did the niceties in the beginning, as in that's how our normal conversation would go, and it would be a check-in and generally how are you doing. And then I was trying to signpost without going around the houses. So I think that's a really nice way of being assertive, but without as well, I have that fear of damaging the ego or stepping on their toes. So to kind of just put myself in that position and say, well, actually, I feel really awkward, then I think that actually sets the scene. And any defensiveness possibly could help to put his guard down. And I think that's what I was trying to do and not doing it very well.
Well, you did, you know, you got me feeling awkward. I can tell you, Amira, that by the end of the conversation, you really made me think, I'm not going to get away with this for too long with Amira, because I have a feeling she's going to call me on it again.
Okay, that's good, because I need that reaction.
Excellent. I think well, you would have got it. You got it with me, and now you just take it into another bit of real life, because you got a real. So when we're doing these role plays, and this is for everybody as well, I'll say that the reactions that we try to have are real. I'm not faking it. So I'll say when it's working with the mirror or with the next volunteer, or when it's not. And you really made me. You made it harder and harder for me to wriggle. Amira, would you be happy to leave it at that as an example?
Yeah, that was great. So thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Brilliant.
Paul,
So, yes.
Paul, we've had a question in from Peter asking if there is an optimum share of the voice percentage, so split in the conversation, who does the talking, between Amira and Paul, her manager.
Yeah. My view would be that if Amira can give a message and then stay out of the way as much as possible and listen to what Paul's coming out with, she might also hear. So percentage wise, let's say if Amira could do like a 30% of the space and her boss the other 70, then it also gives Amira the opportunity to empathize with him, because all of a sudden the glove might be on the other hand and he might be feeling more awkward, and Amira might need to help him to stay comfortable enough to stay in the conversation, comfortable enough to admit that he's been making some mistakes. And that's what these difficult conversations are about. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. I will just say thank you for the question, Peter. Keep them coming, the rest of you. If you've got a comment, or you think, oh gosh, that's not my experience, Paul, or actually I've got an example, then please come up with that and put it in the chat pane. That would be super. It would also be great to have another volunteer any moment now. If you can find somebody in the crowd, please, Nicola. What I was going to say about the gloves changing hands is that when somebody has been or has suddenly found themselves in an awkward conversation that they didn't expect, and in fact somebody brought this up earlier when we were finding out how conversations run into problems, actually making them feel comfortable again is really, really vital. It's probably the most important thing. And this afternoon session at 4 o'clock that Catherine's running is chiefly about noticing when something uncomfortable is happening, which is making it bad enough for somebody to start to malfunction, and then to start to infect the group with that awkwardness. So ironically, one of the things that we want to do in a conversation is sometimes it's to give some difficult feedback, and we want somebody to feel bad, but we don't want them to feel so bad that they then start to malfunction at an emotional level. So that's a curious balance we're looking after. So do we have a volunteer standing by, or can I continue, use the pause as an opportunity to do a little bit more explaining? Just we're going to pause here and see if somebody steps forward. So I'm going to just minimize this screen a little so we can get some more things onto the screen in a moment. Okay. All right. So I'm keen to have another run another example here. And it might be that people's preference right now is to stay as on the spectator end of things, which is absolutely fine. Just going to seeing where this oh, there we go. That's what that's on. So yes, I don't. It's absolutely no problem if you want to remain as happy spectators. I'm just going to clear the screen a little bit to so that we can crack on with the next bit. I'm just changing the tools around a bit. There we go. So let me just get rid of that bit there. Lovely. All right. So do we have a volunteer, or should we get one of our own crew in? Right. Okay. Who's standing by in the wings from our lot?
Hi, Paul. Nigel here.
Oh, great. Okay.
Hi. I think I'm going to give it a go. I'll step in. Maybe we can.
Indeed. Okay. So there you go. All right. So which way around do you want to do this? I'm up for either. Do you want to initiate what might turn out to be a difficult conversation, or do you want me to?
Oh, I see. I'll initiate.
Oh, crikey.
Hang on. Do you want this between us, or are you going to help me?
Oh, well, it could.
It's not what I had in mind.
It could be between. Okay. What do you have in mind then?
Okay. So yeah. So the setup is in the last break. I just found out that Steph, my fiance, threw some of my paperwork away without telling me.
So, oh, I see. Yeah. So you're getting ready for an awkward conversation with him.
Yeah.
Okay. So am I going to be Steph for a few minutes?
Yeah.
Not knowing Steph terribly well, having met him once, can you just remind me a couple of things, a couple of reactions he might have, which would help me to be a tiny bit like him?
Sure. He's quite direct. He's likely to be probably defensive and feel justified in what he's done.
Okay, I think I can probably manage some of that. I'm just going to make sure that I've got there's a particular bit of the screen that I really need to have here. So
Same. Hold on 2 seconds.
okay, all right, okay. So let's do that. I'll be Steph.
Okay.
And incidentally, what I'm going to, yeah, I know I'm not going to put the next screen up yet. So you've seen here, the brevity that what Amira discovered was say something and then stop, the silence in the middle to make me work hard, and then maybe if you need a final point at the end. So yeah, okay. Let's see where this goes. I'm Steph. Go for it.
Okay. Steph, can I have a word?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no problem.
I've seen that you threw away that paperwork that was in the utility room.
Oh, it's been hanging around for days. I mean, yeah, I guess, yeah, you say, what was it important?
The paperwork, it wasn't important, but I'm annoyed that you threw it away because it's like you didn't care whether it was important or not by throwing it away without asking.
I just seen it hanging around for a bit, and I thought you probably wouldn't miss it because you're off. You do tend to leave stuff around.
Yeah, and that's I know that's frustrating for you because I am that sort of person, and by leaving it lying around, even when you've mentioned it before, it's like I'm ignoring what you're saying.
Actually, you're right. It is. I didn't realize you'd noticed that I had to repeat myself on that, but it does get on my wick. And now that we're kind of both stuck at home a lot, it's going to be really important for us to be neater, but I am sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you for the apology, but you know what's really annoying is you when there's other stuff to do around the house, choosing to throw away stuff of mine. Yeah, that's what's
okay, I get it. Yeah, I screwed up. That was stupid. I need to adapt. Yeah. Okay. Time out.
Yeah.
So did you get what you wanted?
I think so. In because it wasn't a formulated conversation at all, to have heard out loud, to feel what it's like to say the words out loud was useful. Still doesn't feel quite right. I'd be interested to hear what impact it had on you.
Are you saying it? Oh, I will tell you that. Were you saying there was stuff left over to say?
It didn't feel like we. Yeah, it didn't feel like we quite got to a. It felt too easy, I suppose.
So I'm thinking now. Okay, I get that. So you were suspicious that I'd caved in a bit too quickly. You thought,
that was it.
He just caved to get out of the room.
Yeah. Yeah. It felt, yeah.
You knew that at the time.
Yes, I mean, maybe I'm trying to work out whether I'm surprised or cynical that it was easy.
It sounds like you've come out with a cracking line there, and even what you said before.
Yeah, there's something there about sticking with it, isn't there? That if you get to what feels like the end of the conversation, but there's that nagging doubt, then to maybe persevere with what's going on to follow up.
So what would that sound like if you were to do it me and we were back in it? What would that sound like now? Yeah, okay, yeah.
I'm worried that what I've. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yes, I'm worried that we're not there. I'm worried that what I've said hasn't properly got through.
No, it has. Actually, it has. Time out. That would have got it through.
Oh, okay.
I would have said, oh, yes, it got through. But you drawing attention to your discomfort, your skepticism, pushed it home.
Okay.
So interestingly, you took a leaf out of Amira's book where she got to the end here being skeptical that it had really made a difference, and she pushed it again, and in fact that's where she became most effective, and you were very effective at the beginning. But what you said the last time was, I was really frustrated that you did it, and that actually, if anything, made me a bit annoyed, made me slightly irritated, because you just repeated the same feeling. I would have been more compelled by hearing about your skepticism.
Right. I get that.
Because it was the new story. Thank you. Are you happy to leave it at that?
Yeah. Thank you.
Cracking domestic example. So a couple of comments. Rachel, have you got those on your screen?
I do, yes. One from Debbie saying that she really liked the way that Nigel mentioned his contribution to the situation. She thought it diffused the situation.
Yeah, it did actually. It leveled the playing field. It made me feel bad. So yeah, good spot there. Absolutely.
That's the only one I've seen so far.
Okay. Peter said, tongue in cheek, it might be better to sort the wedding out first. If you were here for the 10 o'clock session, you'll know what Peter means. Wise words, Peter.
Oh yes, another one that's come through from Mitz saying, great session. A couple of weeks ago, I had to have a very difficult conversation with two people because of everything that's happened with the virus. Had to cancel all new starters. One of them was supposed to start the next day. One of the worst conversations I've ever had to have. These techniques would have been really useful. One for the bank.
Oh, fantastic. That's very nice of you. I want to put a graphic up on the screen. So this is, we're harking back. I made a promise when we were advertising these sessions, 3 ways to get out of trouble, and I'd like to bring those up now. But please interrupt me, Rachel, if something comes up on your screen that you'd like to introduce, the audience would like to introduce. That'd be fantastic. So I've got 3 things, 3 things that I think are really useful. I'm gonna these rather random objects. I'm gonna tell you why I'm pulling them up. I'm just gonna put them more sort of center screen. So why have I got lots of pictures of hairs? Of course, you'll know they're hairs. So the first one is this business of listening. So the most powerful tool you can deploy, and in fact both Amira and Nigel did it, is to stop talking. The real bonus is, as both Nigel and Amira, but Nigel particularly brought it out in his handling of the difficult conversation, is he reflected back to me how frustrated I must be by Nigel continually leaving his stuff around the house. And that humbled me, because I did not expect him to pay attention to my feelings. Listening is an unbelievably powerful way of dismantling a malfunctioning conversation to make it to help to reset it. Extremely powerful. The second possibility is to name your feeling, and in fact Nigel did it, and so did Amira. Calling out how we feel at the beginning is great, but if we find the conversation 1 minute's going fine and then it gets into hot water, it's a wonderful and really refreshing way of resetting it if we can't find it in our hearts to pay attention to the other person's feelings. When we can't find it in our hearts to pay attention to the other people, it's usually because we've got too much going on for ourselves. We can't think straight. We don't really feel very generously towards them. So the most constructive, the most honest, the most real thing to do there to get out of trouble is to say, actually, I'm starting to feel frustrated, or I'm starting to get really put off by this conversation. It's not working for me. And that can often really help to the other person to understand, or people, that something's gone wrong. And the pause after it is really helpful as well. The third bit, and I know we've got some more comments coming in, is being quiet. Yeah, is that so this is the yes, be quiet, yes, listen, but think about being quiet unless you've got something helpful to say. And it goes back to the old aphorism that I don't think my mother ever wielded this one at me, but it's along the lines of, if you haven't got anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. I would slightly twist that round and say, if you haven't got anything helpful to say, don't say anything at all. Because actually something will happen in the room which is better than something that you might have said which wasn't that great. You might accidentally listen. The conversation might slow down. They might accidentally feel better by the silence. You've got some more comment come in on your screen, Rachel.
Yes, we have one from Debbie, who says that her favourite approach is to state a positive intention at the start of the conversation.
Oh, that's interesting. So I wonder what that might sound like. Maybe you'll type that out. What does that sound like, Debbie? Or if you want to, you can stick your hand up and actually join us in the room. So either type or shove your hand up, and we'd love to have you in the room. Is there
and we've had another one from Sylvia, who has said that she likes how you highlighted the importance of brevity, listening, and focus on your own feelings. And she also said it was a great role play by Amira and Nigel too, which I second.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Okay, is there anything more? I'm just looking on the Q&A pane there. Okay, so let me go to this. So stick around, Rachel, and keep an eye on that Q&A pane. So ending things well. One of the things that Nigel made me think, which was really important, is what to do at the end, because sometimes we're not quite sure where the person is, and there is a way of doing that so that you can tell if you've had the effect that you wanted to have. So I'm just going to minimize that and pop that to one side, and I'll put it over here. So if you're wondering, well, is this the end of the conversation or isn't it? What you can actually do, and I'm going to just scribble it up here in a free space. Bear with while I just create another page. Okay, here we go. So yeah, what you can actually do is to empathize. And for those of you who weren't here for the first session, so here is how we see empathy. Empathy, dreadful writing, I'm so sorry, is an opportunity for you to prove that you've picked something up about the other people or person. And it's a non-judgmental way of checking out whether they are where you think they are. And this is how it runs. There are three, but you can get away with two important elements. The first one is to notice how they feel. And it may be that you think, I don't think this is sunk in. Their feeling might be not bothered. The second thing is, what about? We need to notice what is the feeling that they're having about. So in the conversation that I was in as Steph with Nigel, Nigel alluded to this, but he didn't call it out the first time. It's, Steph, this doesn't seem to bother you as much as I kind of want it to. And that is a way of checking out where the other person is emotionally. So you have the opportunity to do that. If you've set something off, either with feedback, so that's scenario one. If you think they're not bothered enough, let's take scenario two. If scenario one is they're still okay, scenario two is they're really not okay, and you think, I can't leave it like this. So you deploy empathy again. It looks like I've really annoyed you by raising that. You look fed up. Brackets, have I gone too far? Either way, staying in touch with their feelings at the end of the conversation is a really good way of rounding things off and making sure that you got what you wanted, even when the conversation got broken at some point. So that's all about ending in a way that you can be sure you knew where it had gone. Anything more on the Q&A, Rachel?
Yes. So Natasha has asked, what do you do when the other person is speaking too much without giving you an opportunity to contribute or reply?
Oh, that's a really good one. It sounds like that's a part of your experience. So the way to do it is to not wait for the right moment, because the right moment won't come. And I'm going to just show you on screen so that it actually registers on the recording as well. The way to handle that is to do this thing here, is to be assertive. And in fact, we can call it assertiveness, we can call it assertive feedback. And to say how you feel or how you're feeling at that moment, and specifically what it's about. Can you imagine how that might, was it Natasha you say asked that?
Yes.
Yeah. So Natasha, as you see that on screen, can you imagine what words might come out of your mouth which would be true to what you're experiencing? The feeling. Frustrated, irritated, worried. And the what about? I'm frustrated, or I'm starting to get frustrated because I can't get a word in. Something like that. Can you imagine that, you saying that, Natasha? And that's it. It's giving some feedback on what effect the person is having. But it's non-judgmental feedback. It's not saying you talk too much or I wish you wouldn't go on. It's saying when you do that, this is how I'm left. I have to, I have to cut in. I'm starting to get fed up actually because you're talking and I can't talk. So being really direct in a non-judgmental way. That's what I would do with that one.
We've also had Debbie come back to us about the elaboration on the positive intention.
Okay.
So she says that she would start it by saying, I need to talk to you about XYZ. So we can work out how we can, for example, one, work more effectively together, or, for example, sort this out so we can get a positive outcome, whatever the issue is. She says that this just shows your agenda, that you are looking for a positive output with their support and not that you are about to tell them off, etc.
Oh yeah, I like the sound of that. Now you're a very sort of positive, thoughtful person, Rachel. How does that chime with you?
I think that's a really nice approach, actually. I feel like that would then start a more collaborative conversation. I think if it's not handled well to begin with, it can feel like you're telling somebody off. And if you blindside somebody or they feel blindsided by this, they don't know if they didn't know it was coming or didn't realize that that was the effect that they were having, whatever the issue might be. That approach seems to me to be a much more mutually respectful conversation.
Yeah, good one. Yeah, I like the sound of that, and it's probably something I might be inclined to take for granted. Surely you know that I'm not coming into this conversation to make you feel worse. But actually saying it out loud might be rather helpful. Yeah, good one. I'm wondering if you, Rachel, or anybody else in the team on our side think that I might have missed anything. I'm going through the things that we promised for this particular session. A comment or something that you've got brewing in your own minds that I have overlooked. This would be a good moment to chip in the last couple of minutes of this session. So any takers, please come on screen.
Hi, Paul. Me again.
Hi.
Hi. Well, I think just something that struck me is how we define what a difficult conversation can be. And in the two examples we've talked about, where we focused on when you've got something that you want to get across. And in both examples, I think empathy has come through. We both had to switch temporarily to shift the focus onto the other person. And it just occurs to me that some difficult conversations, as I think Mitz mentioned, a scenario where she'd had a different sort of difficult conversation where the focus had to be on the other person's emotions, the empathy piece. So a very different type of difficult conversation, but I would imagine also one where you might need to switch then sometimes to what's going on for you as well. For example, I feel awkward about this because I didn't expect to be in this situation.
Yeah, so that's a really good thought. So what you're talking about, Nigel, is yes, it's one thing to have a difficult conversation like Amira was planning for her boss of when we know what's going to happen, but when we're the one who's being blindsided, what do we do there? And what you're recommending, Nigel, which I heartily endorse, is to actually, as soon as we notice what's going on with us, to admit to it. As a way of clearing our own minds and hearts, because otherwise, if we're not honest about our feelings, our own emotions, then what can happen, what always happens, is that they take over to some degree, lesser or greater degree.
Yeah.
So yeah,
well, it's
being really straightforward about that. Yeah, absolutely.
It's judging when to switch. Like with my practice with you, I was very tempted to keep with getting across what I wanted to say, and it was hard work to empathize.
And it's interesting, your hard work was rewarded by probably an even, at least equally, if not a slightly stronger dose of guilt for me as Steph. So that just shows you managing to strain to empathize with me. It just shows what empathy can do to stop a conversation becoming more heated, particularly if you've got history with somebody, which evident, you know, obviously you do. Yeah, it's easy to go into entrenched positions, not just and not just in private relationships, in our public professional relationships. Diane, you have a thought?
You already mentioned it, Paul, but I think it's really useful, and I've certainly found it useful when I'm going into difficult conversation. Is that phrase you said, I think right towards the end, you know, when you do this or when this happens, it makes me feel. And I find it sort of deflects sometimes perhaps what Amira was feeling, which was I'm going to feel slightly uncomfortable because I might make that person feel uncomfortable. But that phrase, when this happens or when you do this, it makes me feel, isn't finger pointing at the person. It's the event that's happening that becomes the issue. So I find that phrase, for me, really useful when I'm going into that difficult conversation.
Fantastic. Right, we're in the last, we're almost in injury time. I just want to say thank you to everybody for participating. Thanks to Mira, thanks to Nigel for stepping in the last minute, and to Rachel for her inputs and reading out the questions and so on. So sort of my big thoughts on this one are definitely around this business of keeping things really simple, and it comes back again and again to, once I've said my piece briefly, is to actually listen to the effect that I've had. That's if I'm initiating the difficult situation. But if I just find myself in it, as Nigel brought out, I'm in a group situation, then if I can listen, so much the better. But if I'm just overtaken by my own feelings, the most constructive thing, paradoxically, is to speak up, is to say it. And we're going to, Catherine's running a session at 4 o'clock. If you're interested, we have this thing about know it, see it, say it. Knowing it is about me, knowing about myself. 2 is being able to see it in action. But this third position, the say it, actually saying what's going on, calling it out, can be immensely helpful in healing a conversation that is going pear-shaped.